All right, well, as you can see, we have jumped into a different space. We're here in Lisbon at a studio that we are using graciously from John's find. This is an amazing find here. It's a beautiful setup. Looking forward to having this conversation, especially letting Kalie do a little more talking when talking about personal finance. Are you up for it?
Why are you going to have me talk? I'm not sure what to say. Okay, so I guess for our listener, I do not do a lot of the financials. Josh generally takes care of that. So we're going to talk today a bit from I don't want to say the financial dummy, but that sounds a bit harsh, but the
It'd
financial.
Make for a good thumbnable.
The financial.
Like it looks like
the financial
book,
dummy. Oh yeah, that's true. Finances for Dummies. Surely there's a book like that, right?
Yeah.
But
John
that would be for me, kind of just some of the beginner stuff, and then I think Josh, you'll jump in with some of the maybe more technical questions that I wouldn't even know to ask.
Yeah, but I also think that this is pretty valuable because you've said to us in your business, you oftentimes sit down with couples and there'll be one person that takes care of the finances and the other person that is not so interested in it. And what's your job?
I'm the marriage counselor. I mean, sometimes I feel like that's what I've been specifically brought in to do, right? Because there hasn't been a hub and spoke for this discussion. Yeah. Maybe one person feels like they're being railroaded by the other person, and they want to come together with the impartial person that does this every single day.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Makes
that
sense.
will not be this type of session. I'm sure you come across couples, though, where it's I don't have much interest in finances, so I'm okay with Josh. And he runs stuff by me, and I always tell him, I trust you, whatever decision you want to make when it comes to, investing in something.
Mm-hmm.
But we do it together. Obviously, it's our joint money. We talk about it, but at the end of the day, I let him make the final decision on it. I think someone has to, right?
Yeah.
There has to be one person who does. And he's more interested into it. He does more research in it and everything. So I'm totally okay with that. But on the other hand, then, when we get into different situations or if Josh isn't around, I need to know what to do as well. So let's start from a bit more of the beginning. And we'll also do it investing on can I move to Portugal with what I have, my money, because I know you help people with that. But I guess let's start with what are some really beginner financial things that people should be aware of that they should know?
Well, first off, any couple that meets with an advisor should just hit pause and stop thinking about the money for just a minute. Because the best place to start from when you're making all kinds of decisions in life, think about your job, think about should we have another kid? You're thinking about where you want to actually be. Mm. And so I want to stop and just take stock of what people are really trying to do with their life first. Because if they start thinking about the bibs and the bobs and the technical parts of the money first, then for sure, one of the two people is going to be yeah, whew, I got this. This is going to be my thing. And the other person's not me though.
Yeah.
I'm not really interested in money by itself.
I mean, interested in having money and being able to spend it, but all the other bits and bobs you said, not so much. Yeah.
Where am I going to be in 10 years? I really can't tell you how important it is that we visualize with as much clarity as possible. What are you doing in 10 years from now? And then we sort of, we close the gap between here and there by going back into the laboratory and cooking up solutions.
Okay.
So you're saying that you work backwards.
I work backwards.
From what the finish line, the intended finish line is. You just work backwards from there.
And then you present different options. Okay, you want this in 10, 20, 30 years or retirement or whatever it might look like. Here are a few different options. And maybe I always hear this risk tolerance term. So do you chat with people about that? How they want to invest? Or
I'll give you an example. So you want to be here in 10 years. You want to have success with the project that you've launched in Porto. You want to have a whole range of things, right? We haven't had this discussion, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
But once you start putting those out on paper, then that just by itself is a really profound statement of purpose. I want to do these 5 things. Mm-hmm. And that limits a whole universe of things that we don't even need to think about now. Okay? When people come to my office and they want to start talking about Bitcoin, right? Or what is artificial intelligence? And should I be interested in buying more shares of NVIDIA right now? I know right away that this is just a Reddit kind of conversation. Yeah. This isn't a real discussion that you need to be having with a professional. So if we have 5 things that we want to do, then we can start working our way backwards through this maze of options that we have with more certainty that some of them are just dumb. They make no sense options. And then the risk thing is just another thing that you don't want to have in your life unless it's justified, unless it serves the purpose of getting to one of these things. Because risk is only risk in view of what? In view of potentially losing something very valuable to us. So if you have things that are super valuable to you, I've got 3 kids. Like those are 3 of the 5 things. And so like, I'm going to make lots of sacrifices, which would have seemed like really dumb sacrifices if it wasn't important to me that I, promote these people through their life in a certain way. Right. So that's why we start with the goals first. What do you really want?
Yeah. That speaks a lot more to me than just like the money aspect, or like, should I invest in AI or Bitcoin? Or I'm like, or what are those, the pictures that aren't actual pictures? NFTs or something. Right?
Non-fungible tokens.
NFTs.
That stuff, I'm like, I don't know. But when you actually put it that way, where it's like, okay, what are your goals? What do you want to be doing in 10 years? Who or what is the most important thing to you? So obviously we have our daughter. So how can we set her up? But then how can I be like, what if I don't want to be working in 20 years? How can we make that happen? That speaks to me so much more. That makes so much more sense to me.
If I want to quit like in a year, at some point in time during like meeting number 2, if you've met with me and you've already met with me, this moment where you're like, what if I didn't want to work like ever?
Yeah.
Like how impossible is that right now? And if that's how you're really feeling, then I want to really show you what maybe you would be sacrificing if you stopped working tomorrow, which is like, part of your budget. And then people go, God, so I could just, like bring my budget in by $500 a month
and make it happen. Yeah.
That kind of puts them right back into the driver's seat, which is where they kind of always knew that they wanted to be in the driver's seat, but there might have been a bunch of like false ideas that they had about having to go to work. Maybe their parents worked until they were 65, and that's when Medicare kicks in. And so that's when I need to be stopping working, but not really. Like if you wanted to change it up, could you?
Could, yeah. And how to do that. So I assume that you have clients who want to move to Portugal, or maybe just move out of the U.S., that you have to work with them on like, okay, you can do it in a year, and here's what you have to do for this next year to make that happen. Is that some stuff that you do as well? So preparing people. So have you ever had anyone who literally is like, I want to quit tomorrow. Can I do it? And you look at their stuff and say, you can, or no, you have to work for 6 more months, but do this, or like what's kind of a normal request?
How many people do you think that I've met with over the years? A lot of people.
Yeah. What's the most normal request that you get though? Like, because I would assume so many people would be like, I want to stop working tomorrow. Because like, how nice does that sound?
But even beyond that, we see statistics in the States where so many people are not prepared for their retirement financially. So how many of those people are actually seeking out professional guidance?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So you want to know what's really sad? Is the people that I see the most, you know who you are. You've got it together. You're just basically wanting to show off a little bit. People that are physically fit probably love to go and get a physical.
Okay.
Right.
The person that's not got their you-know-what together, I'm sometimes, sadly, in this position of having to like coax people to come in because I know they're almost ready, but they're like, I need to be all the way ready to meet with you.
What does that mean?
That means like the people that want to meet with me have all their ducks in a row.
Yeah.
They've got like $1 million in their retirement savings accounts. They've got their pension almost to the finish line, and they are just doing some final checks before they leave work.
Yeah.
Before they hang it up, they're like, I just have to do this final check before I stop working. But, by far more interesting for me are the people that are like more ready than they think that they are. Or the people that aren't ready at all and they're ready to just like take the jump. Like I've met some people via you guys that are just not ready yet. And I love actually being able to step in and go, but wait, you are almost there. But you got to work for 2 more years, guy.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being more useful almost in the sense that like the person that's got everything ready, sometimes they almost want to show off to their spouse. They're like, see,
I knew it.
I knew that was true. But thank you, John, for telling me what I already knew.
Yeah. Reinforcing it.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, confirmation bias. We love to hear what we already knew.
Yeah.
It's less of a surprise. It's less stress.
Yeah.
Stress and money, as it turns out, are never far away from one another.
Go together for sure.
So how are some ways that people can financially prepare for the move abroad, to move to Portugal? What are some steps that people need to take?
Well, I mean, there's the question of income. A lot of people imagine that they're so employable now that they will be also when they move. So people that are our age, right? Like, think of your programmer that's sure that they're going to be able to stay employed when they move. Check into that first, for real though, because I've had people that move and they weren't really thinking through that there might be some tough decisions from the part of management once they moved. Because
Absolutely.
once you become an employee and you're in this market, you're subject to the laws of Portugal. You must then also have your employer comply with those laws. Okay. And some people don't want to be fully honest with themselves that's something that their employer may not be prepared to engage with. Maybe even their direct report, like their manager says, yeah, you know what? We love you. You're essential to this work. And then they take it up the food chain, and some of their bosses are like, you're going to do what with Kalie?
Yeah.
I mean, we like her, but
Not that much.
not that much.
Yeah.
We can find someone else for that job.
Yeah.
And so then they're scrambling. So that's a financial thing.
Yeah.
Because your income.
You've run into this consulting with different people where it's like they need to make sure that their HR
allows
knows
it.
what
Yeah,
they're gonna do.
HR
Yeah.
and the same thing you said. Like my boss loves me and there's no problem, but my boss also said I have to check with HR and I have to check with some people up higher than me. So while the immediate boss doesn't care, they still have to go through the proper channels. So yeah, that has come up with people in my consultations of like, yeah, you have to make sure that they're going to let you work from abroad or whatever that might look like. But we were just talking with someone recently about, I can't remember who it was, where they
It's probably Blake.
no, maybe
Shout out Blake.
Yeah, but it was no, they had a friend who was older who when he was saying when he was like 30, 35 and he changed jobs, it was like easy, no problem getting a job. But now he's in his 50s and there were big layoffs at his job and he thought I'm just going to jump right in and get a job easily, and it's been like 5 years and he hasn't been able to find a job in the same field because he's older because of his age.
Right.
So I thought that was quite interesting. I just don't think that when you're working, you've been doing something for so long and you like, I have the experience. I think times have changed to where it used to be like that with our parents and grandparents, where companies really took stock on the fact that you worked with them, the same company for 30, 40, 50 years. And that's so different now.
Loyalty's changed a lot. Like on both
Yeah.
sides, employees are working less for companies, and companies are pretty quick to just like look at someone as being disposable. They're like, we'll cut them.
And the kind of personal retraining that you must do. The fact is your job may be totally like a great job for you in the States, but then once you change your locus, once you're here, then you are going to look at totally different to the rest of the job market. So you have to be open-minded about what your skill set is. And this is kind of, again, going back to like, what do you really want? Like, you're going to have to make lots of decisions, or at least revisit decisions that you have made in the past. And you're going to have to go, well, if I really like communicating with people and I really like to program, then maybe I should be casting my net out a little bit further into the rest of the English-speaking world.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody's going to want me in Germany.
Yeah.
I have a friend who just got a job in Luxembourg from here, but she wouldn't have seen that job if she wasn't here. Right.
Okay,
Because
yeah.
now she's in Europe. She's a European resident. So she's coming up on different radars.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of stuff that's involved with financial planning that might seem sort of adjacent.
Okay.
But it's really not, because you need to have a burn rate that you can tolerate.
Yep.
So if you can be unemployed for a year and a half, that's a great thing, because you can take that time then to sort of rediscover yourself a little.
Okay.
The first 3 months making IKEA runs and getting, the nest.
Yeah. Getting set up, settled.
Yeah.
So burn rate being like a disposable amount of money that can last you a certain amount of time before you end up getting income again.
Right.
Active income.
Because it's not just like you're changing like a CD and you're just cutting over and then
Yep.
it's like the music starts again.
Yeah.
Like, it takes time.
Yeah. I know.
Go ahead.
Question.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So what about, we were talking about like things that you want in like 10 years, 20 years. Do you ever see people who they say, okay, I want this in 10 years. And then 5 years, 6 years, they're like, that's changed. That's changed. Now, how can I change it to where I'm like this in the next 5 years? Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Like,
I'm
'cause
just trying to
I
think
would-
of some specifics because that happens a lot.
I would think that, yeah, like we did this when we were in our early 20s. What do we want in 10 years and 20 years? And now looking at that, things have changed. Some things are different, some things are the same. So how can you, I guess, protect yourself to make sure that you don't screw yourself over, I guess? Like you say, I want this in 10 years. And then like in 10 years, you're like, I don't want that anymore. I've changed.
Part of the job that I have that's so weird is how much of a therapist that I have become over the years, because you have to like allow people to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say mistakes. You have to build in like a broad tolerance within planning for these hypotheticals that come up. People change their minds. And especially if you've just decided that you want to move to another country.
Absolutely.
You might decide that this wasn't the right move for you.
Yeah.
And so when I do, okay, I'll get technical. Like I do like a whole Roth conversion thing. You know, if you convert your IRA money into a Roth, it's going to change your financial outlook. But that outlook is going to be better regardless of what country you go to, for the most part. I mean, there's probably some countries where it won't be as beneficial to you. But if you go back to the United States, it was still a good idea.
Okay.
So, you know, is it always a good idea to, you know, diet and exercise? It's always a good idea. So like you start from the fundamentals of creating good health such that you can support a variety of outcomes. Maybe you guys want to have another baby. Great. Like, but you know, how much extra money do you have? How much time do you realistically have so that you can parent and make money? And so like the planning process is absolutely like, it's a choose your own adventure about how is the rest of your life going to play out, with the money being a resource that you need to have at all points in time. But it's not as essential as sometimes people think. Once they start the process, they're like, oh, I don't really need $5,000 a month. I probably need $4,000. And I could probably make some better decisions about my, you know, about my like Netflix or streaming habits or something, so I could save some money.
Yeah.
It's not until you start cleaning your house that you really start throwing things away sometimes, right? It's a Marie Kondo sort of thing.
Where are some of the biggest wins that you find with people when it comes to, I mean, you just referenced like Netflix and their streaming habits. Are there things that you see people can cut back on that allow them to, let's say, save more or reduce cost more?
You know, what's cool about living in Portugal and the sort of self-selection bias that we see is no. I don't see that many people. By the time they get to me, they have usually made a lot of those big decisions.
Got it.
I've been surprised by that. I thought I was going to have to do a lot more like walking people back from bringing 40-foot containers or all kinds of things. Like once they get to this place of like, yeah, I'm going to go live in another country, they've usually figured these things out. Some people have bigger eyes than their stomach when it comes to properties.
Okay.
So a lot of people will buy really large properties and find out that they don't really need that. And I'm not really sure if that's just a function of Europeans. And once you become a little bit more European, you start like kind of minimizing a little bit.
Yes.
I mean, remember, you have to actually go to like the American refrigerator section in the appliance store if you want like a huge refrigerator.
Yep. It's actually translated as American fridge.
Yeah. Frigorífico americano.
Yeah. Which is funny.
So people usually have that figured out. I came from San Francisco, California. Sorry, guys, in the Bay Area. But like we have like lofty expectations for our material habits. Like people want lots and lots of stuff. Yeah. And that type of person is actually less well served here. And they usually do not feel as happy. Okay. They do feel slighted. They're like, I had a guy who brought a list of things that needed to be improved. He brought to a meeting one time and we were having it at like in a public place. And I was like, you need to put the list away. That's really
like a list of like things or like
expectations
bureaucracy or like
like let's improve the infrastructure. Like the civic infrastructure could be improved. Let's improve.
He came here and thought that he would improve stuff or like things should be improved because of his pre-existing ideas.
That's fun.
Well, that's like actually when we moved to Saudi Arabia, that was one thing that when they like coached us, that they didn't coach us much, but they said, don't come here and think that you're going to change who they are. Yeah, so don't come. Yeah, that's in Saudi Arabia. Like, how they view things, how they dress, how they live their lives. Don't come here thinking that you're going to change any of that. So you either adapt and be okay with it or don't come, which is really good advice. Obviously, that's a lot more of an extreme
cultural difference.
Yeah, it's more extreme than like Europe, but it's so true. Like, you can't think that it's going to be how you lived wherever you're coming from.
But we have standards and expectations, and sometimes we don't release them as quickly as we thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so standards and expectations come into it. You know, people think things are going to be harder than they are, or vice versa. Now, to get back to my job specifically, people think that banking is going to be harder. Okay. It's not.
Okay.
It's just not.
Yeah.
Like, if you're dealing with Portuguese banks, then there is a certain amount of like, you need to show up in person.
Yeah.
Yes. That you didn't have before. Right. But at the same time, the world has gone digital. And so you can do most of the things that you did before smoothly.
I honestly think banks in the U.S., like, they frustrate me the most. Like, we've lived in a lot of places, and some of the things that like the banks would require in the U.S. compared to like when we lived in Korea, I'm like, what in the world? Like, stuff's so advanced in Korea. So it's like, why are we not doing this in the U.S.? I remember like it was when the chip came out and like cards and stuff. That happened like 10 years earlier in Korea, and like the U.S. didn't have that. Finally, the U.S. was getting the chip when Korea was already contactless. Beep, beep. And it was like, where
Korea
are
was
you,
always
US?
like an iteration ahead.
Always ahead, yeah.
They're microchipping people's forearms now.
Probably.
Totally kidding.
Yeah, no.
But seriously though, no, I'm totally kidding.
But the U.S. banks, I think they drive me crazy. I mean, Portuguese ones aren't. They're just different, right?
They're
you have
just
to do a lot more in
different.
person, which is feels very inefficient because you're just time wasting.
It's
going
a time
in there.
thing. Yeah.
Well, going back to the expectations. So I'm from Southwest Virginia, Northeast Tennessee.
Right.
Pretty like humble territory of the country. Very different than the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, that type of thing. But Kalie, you kind of had an upbringing that was more like middle upper class.
Yeah.
So for the past 15 years, you have had to live more humbly because you married me, and we haven't made very much money. So how has that been, like, adjusting expectations?
I think the biggest thing for me is my mom and I like to shop. And so I was just always used to going to a store, not looking at a price tag, and just like, if I felt like something, I bought it. But I mean, I wasn't paying for it, right? It was my parents. And that's just what we did. It was bonding time. It was what we both liked to do. So when we first moved abroad, and then I realized, I don't have any money. I can't do that. That was shocking. That was really hard. So like, I think, so we moved to Madrid, and it was just like the first 6 months, because I even remember going out, and I didn't make much money. I was an au pair. I lived with the family I worked for, and I went out shopping with some friends, and they were shopping, and I just thought, I don't have any money. Like, I have money like to have like my Metro pass and just daily life stuff, but I don't have any extra money to buy these shoes that I want, you know?
Did you feel a little depressed?
I cried. I cried. No, I literally cried, and called my mom, and she gave me the money to buy those boots. They were amazing. So that was shocking to me. I had never lived like that, but I hadn't fully, I mean, I was away on my own in college, but that's different as well. I was playing soccer, like, so it's almost like I had a job in that sense, and that took care of me financially. And so it was the first time I was like really on my own. Josh had been doing it for a bit, so he coached me through it, I guess you could say. Like, and I remember so we were engaged, and I was, chatting about money with my dad, and he was like, what did Josh do to you? How did you do this, Josh? Like, it was almost like this, he taught me kind of, a bit about money and priorities and everything. And I think it'll be good for us, like, when we're chatting with Valencia about stuff, because I think it's important when you parent to show the importance of money, and that not everything's free. I think it's not that I didn't think, I knew my parents were paying for stuff, and they could afford to do that. But in a way, I lacked experience financially because I didn't have to budget. I didn't have to say, well, I have this much money. What am I going to spend it on? Or am I going to save it for something later? So Josh is already trying to teach Sia that, like, when she asked for like a little, a euro for like a little thing in a machine, obviously it's like junk, and he's just like, you can have that, or you can have this, or, this is your one coin. So what are you going to use it on? That little ride over there, this thing. And when you have to physically use it, you
have got to think this through, Sia. Like, there are limits. There are limits. You must abide. You have to live inside of the limits.
We've started doing this at like the little carnivals they set up. Like, I don't know if those happen here. Yeah. Okay. In Lisbon.
Yeah. They love those.
I love them.
The summers filled with them. They're all over the place.
Which, by the way, in the past couple of years,
too.
in the past couple of years, like, a ride has gone up by €1. Like, whatever the ride was 2 years ago, whatever, might have been €2. Now it's 3. And whatever was 3 is now 4. That's annoying, because inflation has not happened like in a doubling effect on these silly rides, but because it's definitely not a new
No,
setup.
you
But
still
the
see the
thing
duct
is,
tape and stuff on it.
after inflation has taken hold, it's still a percentage increase on what was already like a really low
No,
price.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
So when I go back to San Francisco, I'm like, oh my God, everything cost 30% more. And it was already really expensive.
Yeah. So with her, when we go there, we'll set a budget for her. Like, okay, you have 10 euros. We're going to spend however much time it is here for you to hang out, which is usually 30 minutes, maybe an hour. But it's like, you have 10 euros and you can purchase as many tickets as that 10 euros allows. And now she's got to be the one to hand over the cash to see it depleting.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a lot maybe for a 4-year-old,
No,
but
it's not.
it actually, it's been working.
Yeah,
You know?
I don't know. I always feel bad though, because then we'll go get something to eat, and she'll be, "Can I do one more?" And I'm like, "Go ask your dad." You know, I'm like,
And
I
then
think that's
she'll
where
have
my
no money
mom.
left. I'm like, no, you can't.
Yeah, that's where it was with my mom. You
Yeah.
know, like that's why I shop with my mom, and she really. I remember her saying, "Oh, I just can't say no to you. You look so cute in that." You know, and so I get that. I get that, mom. But you know, I mean, I think that
Thanks,
that is
Kim.
something lacking in just in our education in general in the US, like just simple financial courses that should happen in like middle school and high school. I remember doing a little bit of that, but like just like real life stuff to set you up at least with the mindset of how money works.
Is it
for you and
happening
against
yet?
you.
I think it's got to be happening.
I don't
mean,
know.
because this has been like a steady drumbeat of commentary throughout like the last 2 decades. I've heard of people saying we need to get like basic financial
literacy.
education.
Yeah.
Financial literacy. But has it happened yet?
I don't think it has.
I don't think that it has.
I don't know why, but yeah, it should be happening. But so I
Kim
guess
want us to know.
Yeah, then maybe. Yeah.
Kim won't buy those boots for you if
Yeah.
you really think this through. You're like, I don't need more than 2 pairs of shoes, Mom.
Yeah, that's okay, Mom.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah. But so now I think it lands a lot on parents then to obviously go through it themselves and know, be smart financially, but then also pass that on to their kids. So I think that's also where I'm coming from, where I don't like finances. I don't really like money or dealing with it like we're talking about what to invest in or how much to invest. I do find the value, and I think it's obviously important to know like what are 10 year, 20 years, how can we, visualize and take care of Sia, and what are our priorities. So that's kind of where I come from, the finance side.
I'm your employee when I work for you. Like, this is what I like to really impress with people. This is like, if you have somebody that's like, it's their job to function in much the same way that your computer does, like just ask it how to get there. Like, you don't have a hard time telling your GPS, like, I've got to get there. And if you tell me it's got 2 hours and 20 minutes, that's my arrival time, then I will go whatever way you tell me to go. That's how I look at it when I work for somebody. I'm working for you. Like, I will tell you that, like, if you want to blow it out of the water and we should invest in hyper risky things because you're comfortable with the kind of risk that's going to come with that, let's do it. I can help you to do it. And it might be exciting, but it might also be like, a lot of conversations about the levels of disappointment that you might feel when things turn against you. Because they will. At some point in time, and so that's what your employee's job is just to be realistic about forecasts. So you don't have to distrust them and go, really? Is that true? Like, I had a client last night. She had $3 million that she had like mentally blocked out. And it took me a while to recognize what was happening was just that, like, she had been a single mother. And in this process of, like, shout out to all my single moms out there, like, what a process that is to not only be a single parent, but to also keep your life on track. Like, this person was a college professor. Okay. Like, so impressive. And so mentally, she had just adopted this ultra rigorous discipline of this money's not really mine. And now I had to like reconnect her with her long lost money. I'm like, you have $3 million, lady.
Yeah.
Like, it's there.
It's cash, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you're telling me you can't afford to buy a house when you get to Portugal, I need to know what kind of house you're going to buy.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what are you looking for? It's like, well, I want to live in Setúbal and buy a 400,000 euro house. Yeah. You're going to be all over that. And you don't have to keep working. She thought she would have to keep working for another 2 years. She's waiting for the pension to kick in. And I'm still like, what am I not seeing? I work for you. You've invited me into your home and asked me to reorganize your cabinets. And you tell me there's no food there. But I am looking at a giant box of, Golden Grams or whatever. I'm like, do you have some intolerance to money? Like, so yeah, by the end of that meeting, we had just broke through a bunch of walls.
But it sounds like they were
better.
way more psychological than real
Sure.
barriers.
Sure. But again, like we listen to strangers sometimes where, I mean, I know my wife says this all the time. It's like, oh, of course you like, there's a sound the car's making, right? And I'm like, it's fine. I'm not sure that it's been doing that for long. No, it's been doing that since the winter and you didn't want to get it taken in. And all of a sudden the mechanic's explaining it to me. And I'm like, and what do we need to do?
And your wife's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, she's like,
Yeah.
we should have brought
Telling
this
you
in
this.
February.
Yeah.
And this guy is telling you, and you're like, how much do we need to pay to get this fixed? Like when you're paying to have an experience, you're sort of bought into it on a level that you wouldn't have been when you were just sitting on your couch. It's just human nature.
Well, we were talking about this off camera where it feels very much like when you walk into a doctor's office, we're much more open to telling a doctor about what's going on with our bodies than really anybody else. Like usually we try to keep that stuff to ourselves. So I assume that people that are coming into you about financial matters just kind of bust open the books. They want to talk about their financial matters.
Yeah, I think that's
which
right.
is good.
It's totally good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not out there to just sell a bunch of stuff. Like the financial world has changed in the last 40 years. Like
in what ways?
Well, like I grew up on movies like Wall Street.
Okay.
You know, with Gordon Gekko and the guys trying to sell stocks on the telephone.
Yeah.
And like that was like a total sales shtick. But now if you're a certified financial planner, you're the most god-awfully boring person. Like
I thought that was a CPA.
Really, no. The CPAs are on the same level with us now.
Okay.
Like we were supposed to be exciting. When I got the job, I did think it would be more like that, but it didn't turn out that way. In the end, you have to be a patient, responsible person, just like the CPA is, and help people solve problems. Wham. Yeah. It's but that's what it is. Like there's a show on Netflix called Ozark right now that is my guilty pleasure because there's a character that seems like, you know, he's like, he doesn't want to be, but he's in the middle of all this excitement. All this shockingly exciting things are swirling around him. But no, like the reality of life is we all have to go to work and we have to make choices that are going to sustain us for a long time. And it's a boring job. But yes, when people come to open up their kimono, I'm all about it.
Awesome.
Like, let's get this fixed.
Yeah.
Let's make things happen one-on-one.
And you have to, be honest about everything that's going on, right? So that you can do your job properly. Because if you're hiding something and I have this or this and you don't know about it, then you can't properly help, right?
It's just a dumb decision to hide things.
Yeah.
Like you've got to find the answers, which is, more true now than it has ever been, right? I mean, because somebody's going to look it up online and fact check you today.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, right.
Like, there's nothing.
Only our politicians realize that.
Probably during the meeting when we get the phone out.
Well, yeah, because I work for people for years sometimes. So, like, we have to stick to the plan. You can't tell somebody to eat 3 cheeseburgers a day if they really want to get fit. In a year, they're going to find you out.
Yeah.
Okay, so talking about sticking to the plan, recalibrating and then staying on course, because if we've got this thing that's out there that's our target, and we're going a certain direction, there's always some sort of recalibration that has to happen. But at what period does that happen? Like every 3 months, 6 months, every year? Like when do you need to help a client recalibrate?
Well, I have a personal rule that I check in quarterly.
Okay.
So some people wave me away. They're like, yeah, I'm good. But at least quarterly.
Okay.
I mean, I do my work on the investments anyways.
Yep.
So I'm an investments professional. So I'm tinkering in the background, making sure that the lighting's right, that everything's set up right. And then I'm going to force you to talk about taxes once a year.
Yeah.
Because that's
necessary evil. Yeah.
It's necessary evil. It always happens. So yeah. So like, taxes, major life events, moving to another country is the most exciting event that I get to talk about all the time now. Or, sad events that happen. Someone gets injured,
Deaths,
somebody
injuries.
loses a job, somebody dies. These are things that I'm here for that.
Okay.
And so these are all of the kind of ordinary triggering events that one should and can visit a financial professional to help them think through, even if it's just that. It's just like a storyboarding process, right? And yeah, when somebody dies, it's hard to talk about some of these things.
Yeah.
So
okay, let's kind of go back to the beginning of that list there, looking at people that are moving abroad. Let's get specific. They're living in the U.S. and they're going to move to Portugal.
Yeah.
What types of, or what amount of money does someone need to make that move at a minimum?
So the 4% rule still holds. So if you can live on 4% of your income, And that is a total of your Social Security or whatever pensions you have and your savings. So it's as simple as that. Like if you want to live on $80,000 per year and you've worked your budget out, including taxes, and you have maybe 40,000, maybe from pensions and Social Security, and then 40,000 from your portfolio. If you have $1 million,
you're good.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the initial upfront costs that people need?
Do you mean to move?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what are you seeing? What are you recommending? I mean, I think Kalie has a number because you oftentimes consult with people about this.
Well, of course, it depends on what you're looking for, your lifestyle, moving.
Yeah,
but I call them the setup costs. You're always going to have those upfront costs the first few months because you're getting set up. You talk about the IKEA runs and stuff. You always spend more at the beginning.
This is so cool. Do you have I
don't have a set
formula?
number. No, I don't have a set number or necessarily a formula, but there are factors that go into it. Is it a single person? Is it a family of four?
Yeah.
What part of Portugal are you moving to? Are you getting a car? Are you renting? Are you buying? I mean, so on my consultations, this is why it's nice because you talk to someone one-on-one about what your actual desires are and what some of these expectations might be, and giving them a realistic number on how much they should have in their mind of what they're going to spend on those setup costs and then what a monthly budget would look like. But it's different for different people because of lifestyles and expectations. One of the biggest things actually that I tell people is the best thing you can do when you move to Portugal is come here with no expectations. You're going to be a much happier person because if you have high, low, whatever it is, if you just have no expectations and you're just ready for the ride, then it's just going to be a much smoother transition.
You really did a number on her. Her dad was right. It's no expectations. Just set them right down on the floor. Everything's going to be impressive.
Financially. I'm not just financially though, but just in everything.
No, you're right. Yeah, no, expectations are your enemy. Mm-hmm. If your expectations are right here and and you're your space that you can be happy is right here, that's hard. Mm-hmm. But so most people when they move here are pretty realistic. They seem to be, at least my people. They come here, they rent an Airbnb for about 3 months. They do the scouting around on locations and find where they want to live. They're selling their house at that time, and then they have the bucket of money. Yeah. And then they go, well, I'll spend 60% of what I just cleared on the house, invest the rest with John, and then you're good.
Hopefully set, yeah.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? I can't even remember what your initial question was.
No,
I think I hijacked
it. I just think back to whenever our number has always been different depending on where we've moved and how we've moved, right? Yeah. So when we first moved to Spain, Kalie's setup costs were almost nothing. We bought our flights either on Priceline or we used points. I can't remember which one that was. We might have even used points for that flight, but we bought one way, right? So we just bought to get to Europe. We found the cheapest flight to Europe and then figured out how to get down to Madrid. And yeah, I mean, we were super on a budget, but then when we
used to call ourselves ballers on a budget.
Ballers on a budget.
We live it up with very little money.
It was going to be our first YouTube channel, but or show at least. But when we arrived in Madrid, Kalie's setup costs were nothing because she was an au pair. Mm-hmm. My setup costs were pretty low because I was becoming a roommate to other people that were already living in an established house. And therefore, I didn't have to have any deposits apart from 1 month's rent, but I didn't have to do a utilities deposit and have multiple months up front. And I wasn't occupying the whole house. I was just occupying a room. So therefore, our upfront costs were $1,500,
very minimal.
Which we had. That was easy. But for some other people who might want to make the move, maybe they need $10K in cash reserves just for the setup costs. Right?
Yeah, depending
because
on what
they're
you have
shipping
to do.
Something and they're bringing a car over and they're
renting an unfurnished apartment and so they need to fully furnish it. I mean, it just really depends on your situation on how much you'll need.
I mean, a lot of people have to go back and forth for the initial period. Maybe they're winding down their old life.
Yeah.
They're selling a house. They're helping their children settle into college. Whatever. The range is vast of experience. A lot of people catch the travel bug. As soon as they get here, they're like, oh man, I'm so close to Paris now. I should just do a few more trips before I really settle in. Mm-hmm. And I talked to them in a few months and they're like, yeah, that other account, we just used that account. I'm like, that was a $40,000 account. Well done.
Living it up.
I got to see the pictures.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing too. We were talking about this off camera. I think the mentality in the US has always been like you work until you retire, and you're so used to saving money. So some people have a hard time when they actually have the money, like, hey, it's time to spend. Like we have friends like that where they like, yeah, their financial advisor was just like, hey, you have the money, spend, go live your life.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like you have that money, travel, go. Like how cool.
So sometimes the documents that we provide when we do a financial plan are exactly that for people. They need to smash those preconceptions with a hammer. And like the numbers don't lie. Like the lady with $3 million that she's not using. Sorry, I know. We talked about this. And it's like $3 million.
Don't name any names.
I'm not naming names. But I'm like, this is the reality right here. And now you can choose to sit here and you can choose to stare at it and maybe it will go away, good or bad. But like that's why I love my job. I was going to be a therapist for a minute until I realized this. I don't want to deal with fantasies. It's so much harder for me to feel like I'm making a difference if people aren't going to actually resolve to make things happen. Okay. And by the time people have plugged in the numbers and they're working out the spreadsheets with me, it's so satisfying because they're going to do it.
Yeah.
They didn't even think that when we started this process that they were going to sometimes. And then they get to the end and they're like, this
Whoa.
really works.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding, it works. But like until somebody draws you a picture sometimes, right? Like,
or just hearing it from someone else. Maybe like you were saying, your wife, like she would say this, and I don't know, but just hearing it from an expert, from a professional, showing, not just hearing some crazy dream, but like showing the numbers, it's sitting there plainly in front of you. You can be like, okay, I can totally make that work.
A lot of things seem crazy to a lot of people. Like your set point for crazy is not my set point for crazy.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. But everybody thinks everything is either normal or not relative to their own experience. And like, that's the craziest thing with moving abroad. It's just like so many things are like, whoa, that's the Arc de Triomphe. And for somebody in Paris, that's just part of their day-to-day commute.
Yeah.
And they're like, get out of the way.
Yeah.
Stop staring at the scenery. I've got to get to work by 8 o'clock or my boss is going to can me.
Yeah, that's so true.
So everybody's got a different thing.
Kalie, so you brought up kind of the idea about how to use money or like, this couple's got this money, they need to spend.
Yeah.
Where do you sit on legacy money and giving money to kids versus spending it on your own travel desires and own enjoyment?
Well, you just talked about like your experience with your parents, your experience with parenting. We all have to figure that out for ourselves. I mean, we, of course, are going to resolve to take values on that we had learned from somebody else. But again, if you're looking at the future with an unvarnished view, you can see that some things are really worth learning, having some discipline about how you make choices and not believing in like the unlimited funds that some parents might have. I'm as guilty as anybody. Sometimes when I am totally involved in my work, I will give a little bit of money to my kids to go buy an ice cream. But that's a small thing. Like we have to have structured discussions with our people. With our kids, we have to be really honest with them about what's happening here. That's been my approach anyways. And then giving them little micro lessons.
Where do you sit personally? Like, do you hope to be able to pass them a lot of your retirement, or do you want them to earn, their way?
I didn't inherit any money, so a little bit, but I don't know that it will hurt to leave some money to the kids.
Yeah,
but somebody once upon a time said, I want to give them enough that they can do whatever they want, but I don't want to give them so much that they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Like they're going to have to make some choices. I don't think that's the phrase, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I don't want them to starve.
Sure. Right.
Because you're going to make dumb decisions when you're living in a psychology of famine. But when you think everything's unlimited, like somebody was talking to me the other day about everyone living like, a top level American standard of living. It's actually not doable. So let's just think about that. Yeah. And so with the kids, like I also want them to set their expectations accordingly.
Yeah. That's great advice.
Makes sense.
I agree. Well, I think when I think about finances, again, like I've talked about before, you asked like a technical question and I almost felt like my eyes were already glazing over on it. It was like a technical question about finances, but it was, necessary. But I liked how we talked about visualizing and your priorities and your 10-year, 20-year plan, whatever that might be, because I think that's really important. So it's nice now, I think, chatting with Josh about he can still deal with more of the finance stuff. I can listen to it a little bit and then deal with more of like what life looks like later on. So I guess my final question for you would just be, what kind of advice would you have for someone just to get started? Whether it's just that maybe they don't have much money and they don't know much about finances. What's like just a 1 or 2 steps that they can do that they're just moving in the right direction?
Well, if they have money to open up an investment account and they don't have one, just open up an investment account.
Okay.
Go online today and go to Charles Schwab or whatever. Open up a CD at your bank. Just do something. When I first started like working out at the beginning of the pandemic, I just had to go in there and just lift some weights.
Yeah.
Don't think too hard about it.
What's the minimum?
Like $100.
Okay.
So
Really? Like
little bit.
$100, just open up an account online and just send the money in. And then get onto a rhythm of doing it every month.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's really where it always starts.
good habits, right?
It's about
Put it in another way,
habits.
yeah.
It really is. Yeah, buy some CDs because the rates, to get technical, the rates are going down because the U.S. is going to start cutting interest rates soon.
Okay.
So just give a teaser to your audience that I do have these discussions. We didn't talk like this today, but we talk about, Treasury rates and how rate cutting is going to affect like the shape of the American economy to come. If you like to have that talk, we can have that talk too, but I don't think you want to.
I don't want to be there, that's for sure.
And we didn't even get into foreign exchange rates.
No, we didn't go to Forex.
Because what we're seeing now is the U.S. dollar is kind of losing ground towards the euro, which will affect people's moves in certain ways.
Both of these oncoming administrations are going to be hitting the Forex rates like a truck, and it's going to affect things.
Yeah.
It can't not. So that's another aspect to it. I didn't want to leave anybody that was really technical high and dry.
Yeah.
These things I love.
Well, we've had you on the podcast several times. So I really want the listener to make sure that if you have a question for John that you would like us to ask for the next time we have him on, that you put that in the comment section below. Email us, and we'll put together those questions to ask John.
Yep. Yeah. You can do podcast at ExpatsEverywhere.com for any questions you might have. We'll put your Calendly link in our description and show notes because John has a little spot. If you go to Expats Everywhere intro call, you can have a quick little 15-minute intro call with you if you'd like to just see if you'd like to work with John. And then, we'll definitely have you back on. But if you're if you're interested in the more technical stuff, I am not on that call. Josh is. that podcast is saved for Josh and John, and I will sit that one out. But this was a fun one.
This was good to have you on here.
Yeah,
I liked it. Yeah, we got out of the weeds a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm into it. All right, let's do it again sometime, guys.
John,
awesome.
thank you.
Sounds
Appreciate
good.
it.
Thanks, John.
Ciao, ciao. Abraço.
Let's get moving.